She said, "You walk in like you already own the room." But that night, she owned me. I didn't plan on staying long that night. A friend of mine had a small art showcase downtown, one of those cozy, half-lit gallery cafes where people talk more about ideas than themselves. I figured I'd show up, shake a few hands, grab a drink, and disappear before midnight. But the second I walked in, she turned. It wasn't dramatic, no spotlight, no slow-motion moment. Just a shift in the air, like the room adjusted itself around her. She was standing near a large painting, something abstract, deep reds and gold, holding a glass of wine like she'd been doing it her whole life. She had that kind of presence that doesn't ask for attention. It quietly demands it. I smiled, nodded a few familiar hellos. I was halfway through greeting someone when she said it, calm, confident, with the slightest curve of a smirk. "You walk in like you already own the room." I remember pausing, caught somewhere between laughter and surprise. Her tone wasn't mocking. It was observant, teasing, and oddly intimate, like she'd seen a part of me I hadn't meant to show. I walked over, still smiling. "Maybe I just know how to find the light," I said. She chuckled softly, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Or maybe you don't know how to hide." Her name was Alicia, early 40s, editor for a small publishing house, she told me later. Sharp mind, smooth voice, and an elegance that didn't need decoration. She wore a cream blouse tucked into black slacks. Simple, but there was something in the way she carried herself that made the room slow down. We talked briefly about the art, about how most people pretend to understand it. She had a way of speaking that made even silence feel intelligent. Every time she looked at me, I felt both seen and tested. Around us, laughter floated through the low jazz playing from a corner speaker. The smell of roasted coffee beans and fresh paint mixed in the air. A couple nearby was arguing softly over whether the art was honest or overpriced. And yet somehow all I noticed was her. When she reached out to shake my hand goodbye, her fingers lingered. Not long, but long enough to make me wonder if she felt that same, almost imperceptible pull. Her perfume, something woody, with orange and spice, followed me out into the night. Later, walking home, her words kept echoing in my head. "You walk in like you already own the room." I didn't own anything that night. Not the room, not the moment, not her. But from the way she looked at me, calm, curious, amused, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had quietly begun. Something that didn't need permission. Something that might just find its way back to her. I didn't expect to see her again. But a few days later, there she was, sitting alone at the same cafe that bordered the art gallery. Morning light streamed through the tall windows, cutting across her table in soft gold. She was reading, half absorbed, half aware of the world. There was something effortless about her. The way she tucked a stray curl behind her ear, the way her coffee sat untouched, growing cold while she turned each page with care. I stood at the counter longer than necessary, pretending to study the menu I already knew by heart. When she finally looked up and saw me, a small smile tugged at her lips. Not surprise, recognition. "You again," she said. I smiled back. Guess the room wasn't enough. Had to come back for the company. That earned me a soft laugh, low, genuine. The kind that makes you feel like you've just been let into a private joke. She gestured toward the empty seat across from her. "Then sit. But don't make me regret it." I did. For the next hour, the world outside blurred. Cars passed, people talked, a barista called out orders. But all I could focus on was her voice. It had a rhythm that felt lived in, seasoned with wit and something heavier underneath. She told me she worked in publishing, editing the things people pretend they understand, she said with a sly grin. I told her I was trying to figure out what I wanted from life, that I did some design work, a bit of photography, a lot of overthinking. "You're one of those," she said, sipping her coffee. "A quiet storm type. You watch everything but say just enough to keep people guessing. And you're one of those who sees through people too fast," I replied. "Occupational hazard," she said. "I read between lines for a living." There was a pause. Not awkward, just aware. The kind that hums with something unspoken. Her eyes drifted to the window, following a trail of raindrops sliding down the glass. "I used to love rain," she said softly. "Then life happened, and it started feeling like a reminder instead of comfort." I didn't ask what she meant, but I wanted to. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, like we both knew we were standing at the edge of something neither of us had planned to find. When I reached across the table to hand her a napkin, my fingers brushed hers. Just a second, but it was enough to feel that same pulse of awareness that started the night we met. She didn't pull away, just looked at me. Steady, unreadable, maybe even curious. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, tracing patterns against the glass. Inside, the world felt smaller. 2 cups cooling between us, 2 lives quietly circling closer. And somewhere between the laughter and the pauses, I realized something dangerous. I didn't just want to talk to her again. I needed to. It became a quiet rhythm between us. We never planned it, never called ahead. We just seemed to find each other. Some evenings she'd already be at the cafe, notebook open, pen tapping in thought. Other times I'd arrive first, pretending to work while hoping she'd appear. That night it was raining again. The kind of steady drizzle that softens the city's edges and turns streetlights into watercolor. She walked in wearing a long navy coat, raindrops glistening in her curls. "You still haunting this place?" she asked, setting down her umbrella. "Only because you keep showing up," I said. She smiled, that half smile that looked like it was trying not to mean too much. We talked for hours, about books, people, the strange timing of things. There was something comforting about her voice, like jazz played low enough that you have to lean in to catch the melody. When the cafe closed, she gathered her things slowly, almost reluctantly. I offered to walk her home. She hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. The streets were mostly empty, just the occasional car sliding past, the distant wail of a siren somewhere. She lived a few blocks away, near a row of quiet brownstones. For a while, we didn't talk. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was companionable, like the space between verses of a song. The rain had softened to a mist, brushing cool against our faces. She broke the silence first. "You know, you surprise me," she said. "How so?" "You're calm. Most people your age are trying to impress or perform. You don't." "I've done enough pretending in my life," I said. "Feels good to just show up as I am." She looked at me then, a long, searching look that felt more intimate than touch. "That's rarer than you think." We stopped at a crosswalk. The glow from the street lamp pooled around her like soft gold. Her coat swayed slightly in the breeze. For a heartbeat, I wanted to reach out. Not to hold her, just to close the distance. She must have felt it too because her voice softened. "Your trouble," she said quietly, not accusingly, but like a truth she didn't want to believe. "Maybe," I said, smiling, "but the good kind." She laughed, shaking her head. "That's what they all say." When she shivered, I slipped off my jacket without thinking and placed it over her shoulders. She didn't protest, just sighed, a sound that felt like both surrender and gratitude. "Thank you," she murmured. Our hands brushed when I adjusted the collar, and time did that strange thing again. Stretching, holding, waiting. At her doorstep, she turned to me. "You should go before the rain gets worse." "Yeah," I said, though neither of us moved. She smiled faintly. "You really don't hide well." And then she was gone, door closing softly, light spilling through the cracks. As I walked away, jacket damp, heart restless, I realized something simple and terrifying. I didn't just like her company anymore. I missed her, even when she was standing right beside me. It started as something innocent. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Alicia texted me that afternoon. "Groceries and a broken shelf. You seem like the type who knows how to fix things." I laughed at the message, not because of the shelf, but because I knew what she was really asking. "Come over. I need the company more than the help." When I got there, her apartment felt like her. Simple, warm, thoughtful. Books lined the walls, jazz vinyls leaned against the stereo, and the faint scent of vanilla and sandalwood filled the air. She wore a soft gray sweater, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair tied loosely. We fixed the shelf quickly, then sat with glasses of wine, the city humming softly beyond the windows. It wasn't late yet, but time already felt slower there. "Do you always play music like this?" I asked. "Only when I want to remember who I am," she said, eyes drifting toward the record player. I nodded, understanding in ways I couldn't explain. The conversation began to wander, from music to old mistakes, from people we'd loved to the spaces they left behind. At one point, she leaned back on the couch, legs folded, watching me quietly. "You make it very easy to talk," she said. "Maybe you just needed someone to listen." Her gaze softened. "Careful. That kind of honesty makes people fall for you." I smiled. "Maybe I'm not trying to make anyone fall." "Then stop looking at me like that," she said, almost whispering. I didn't know how I was looking at her, but I knew what she meant. The air between us had shifted, heavier now, charged, intimate. I tried to speak, to lighten it somehow, but my words came out softer than I intended. "Then stop looking back." Silence. Outside, the rain began again, a steady rhythm against the glass. Inside, her eyes held mine, unflinching, searching. I could see the conflict there, curiosity tangled with caution. She broke eye contact first, exhaling slowly. "We're not doing this," she murmured, almost to herself. "I know," I said, though part of me wasn't sure I believed it. Her hand brushed mine when she reached for her glass. A small movement, nothing deliberate, but the warmth of that touch stayed. She stood then, turning toward the kitchen. "I should put this bottle away before we both start saying things we'll regret." Her voice was steady, but her shoulders told another story. Tension, hesitation, something she was trying hard to hold back. I nodded, taking the hint. But before I left, she turned again, eyes softer now. "You make it hard to stay rational," she said quietly. I smiled faintly. Guess we're both pretending not to cross the same line. And in that moment, I knew the truth neither of us could say aloud. The line was already gone. Days passed before I saw her again. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how to. After that night at her apartment, something had changed between us. It wasn't anything said aloud, but the air carried it, that fragile weight of almost. We texted less. She stopped coming to the cafe for a while, and every time I walked past that place, I half hoped, half dreaded that she'd be there. When she finally called, her voice sounded calm. Too calm. "Meet me for coffee," she said. Just that. The moment I saw her, I knew it wasn't just about coffee. She looked beautiful as always, but different somehow, guarded. Her hair was pulled back, her lipstick darker. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey." We sat down. The silence was thick, filled with everything we hadn't said. Finally, she spoke. "I've been thinking," she said, "and I realized something. I can't do this." I leaned forward. "Do what?" "This," she said, motioning vaguely between us. "Whatever this is trying to become." I stayed quiet. She took a breath. "You're kind, and you're dangerous. Not in a bad way, just in the way that makes people forget what they promised themselves." I could feel my chest tighten. "I'm not trying to take anything from you." "I know," she said quickly. "That's what makes it worse." Her voice cracked slightly, the first real break in her composure since the night we met. "I've been through enough," she said quietly. "Enough beginnings that end too soon. Enough people who mean well and leave anyway. I don't want to build something I'll have to grieve later." I wanted to tell her I wasn't like them, that what I felt wasn't a phase or curiosity. But the truth was, I didn't know what we were yet. I just knew I didn't want to lose her. "You don't have to protect me from what we haven't even named," I said finally. Her eyes met mine, steady, shimmering. "And you don't have to save me from my own history." We sat there, two people on opposite sides of the same fear. Outside, clouds hung low, pressing against the cafe windows. Inside, the piano music felt softer, sadder. Neither of us touched our drinks. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. She didn't pull away, just looked down at our fingers, intertwined and trembling. I don't know where this goes, I said, but I know it's real. She closed her eyes for a moment, then whispered, "Don't make this harder." "I'm not trying to," I said. "You already make it impossible." A small, helpless laugh escaped her, the kind that hides tears behind it. For the first time, she didn't correct me, didn't argue, didn't hide. We sat like that for a long time, no promises, no plans. Just two people caught in a quiet, beautiful ruin of something neither of us was ready to let go of yet. A week passed, then another. I tried to focus on work, on friends, on anything that didn't remind me of her. But she was everywhere. In every song that played too softly, in every cup of coffee gone cold beside me. I missed her voice, her laughter, even the silence that used to stretch comfortably between us. Then one night, after a storm that painted the city in wet reflections, I found myself standing outside her building. I didn't plan to go there. My feet just decided before my head caught up. Her apartment light was still on. I almost turned around, told myself I was being foolish, when the door opened. She stood there, hair damp, wrapped in a robe, barefoot. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes softened with something that looked like relief. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "I know," I replied, "but I needed to see you." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the room smelled like rain and chamomile tea. A half-finished book lay open on the couch, a blanket draped over one armrest. The record player was off, but the quiet felt like music anyway. I sat down slowly, unsure of what to say. She joined me on the couch, not close, but not distant either. "You look tired," she said. "So do you." "I haven't been sleeping much," she admitted, eyes fixed on her teacup. "I keep thinking about that night, about us, about what I said." "What we said," I corrected gently. She gave a small smile. "You always find the right words." "Not tonight," I said. "Words don't seem big enough for this." A silence settled, heavy, but not uncomfortable. The kind that speaks louder than talking ever could. She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression changed. The wall she'd been holding up for weeks began to crumble. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of me. Of feeling this again," she said. "Of what it might cost." I took a slow breath. "Then let's not call it anything. Let's just be here, in this moment, and not run from it." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingertips lingered near her cheek, not touching, just there. She closed her eyes, exhaling softly, and leaned in until her head rested against my shoulder. For a long time we didn't move. The sound of the rain against the window filled the quiet. Her hand found mine, fingers slow, tentative, then sure. No declarations, no promises, just presence. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You make it easy to forget why I built walls in the first place. And you make me want to stop pretending I don't care," I said. She smiled then, small, tired, real. Outside, thunder rolled one last time. Inside, everything finally went still. It's strange how silence can hold more meaning than words ever could. Weeks passed since that night. The night her head rested against my shoulder. The night we let the world fall away and stopped pretending we didn't feel what we felt. Nothing needed to be named anymore. It just was. After that evening, things between us grew gentler. We still met at the cafe sometimes, still talked about everything and nothing. But something had shifted. There was peace in it now. The urgency had softened into understanding. One afternoon, she told me she'd accepted a position abroad, a 6-month editing residency in Paris. I smiled before the ache could show. "That's incredible," I said. She studied my face carefully, as if reading between my words. "It's what I've always wanted, but I didn't expect it to come now." I nodded. The right things rarely come at the right time. We didn't talk about what it meant for us. Maybe because we both already knew. A week later, we met at the gallery, the same place where it all began. The same golden lights, the same soft jazz curling through the air. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt it. She wore a deep green dress, simple and elegant. Her hair framed her face just the way it had that first night. When she saw me, her smile was warm, steady. "You still walk in like you own the room," she teased lightly. "Maybe I just walk in hoping you'll be in it," I said. Her laughter came softly, tinged with the weight of goodbye. We wandered through the exhibit, talking in low voices, pretending to care about the art while both of us knew this was our last evening. At the end of the night, we stood by the door, the city glowing outside, rain threatening again. She looked at me, her expression calm, almost serene. "You know," she said, "you never really owned the room." I raised an eyebrow. "No?" She shook her head, a small smile forming. "But you owned my attention, every single time." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath, close enough for her perfume to stir old memories. I kissed her forehead. Just that. Soft, steady, final. She closed her eyes, resting her hand briefly against my chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me what it feels like to be seen." When she pulled away, her eyes were shining, not with sadness, but something deeper. Peace. I watched her walk toward the street, her figure fading into the evening light. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. As the door closed behind her, I realized love doesn't always stay to be built or broken. Sometimes, it just arrives to leave you better than it found you. And as I stepped out into the night, I smiled. Not because I'd lost her, but because, for a little while, we both stopped pretending we weren't waiting to be found. It's strange how silence can hold more meaning than words ever could. Weeks passed since that night. The night her head rested against my shoulder. The night we let the world fall away and stopped pretending we didn't feel what we felt. Nothing needed to be named anymore. It just was. After that evening, things between us grew gentler. We still met at the cafe sometimes, still talked about everything and nothing. But something had shifted. There was peace in it now. The urgency had softened into understanding. One afternoon, she told me she'd accepted a position abroad, a 6-month editing residency in Paris. I smiled before the ache could show. "That's incredible," I said. She studied my face carefully, as if reading between my words. "It's what I've always wanted, but I didn't expect it to come now." I nodded. The right things rarely come at the right time. We didn't talk about what it meant for us. Maybe because we both already knew. A week later, we met at the gallery, the same place where it all began. The same golden lights, the same soft jazz curling through the air. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt it. She wore a deep green dress, simple and elegant. Her hair framed her face just the way it had that first night. When she saw me, her smile was warm, steady. "You still walk in like you own the room," she teased lightly. "Maybe I just walk in hoping you'll be in it," I said. Her laughter came softly, tinged with the weight of goodbye. We wandered through the exhibit, talking in low voices, pretending to care about the art while both of us knew this was our last evening. At the end of the night, we stood by the door, the city glowing outside, rain threatening again. She looked at me, her expression calm, almost serene. "You know," she said, "you never really owned the room." I raised an eyebrow. "No?" She shook her head, a small smile forming. "But you owned my attention, every single time." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath, close enough for her perfume to stir old memories. I kissed her forehead. Just that. Soft, steady, final. She closed her eyes, resting her hand briefly against my chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me what it feels like to be seen." When she pulled away, her eyes were shining, not with sadness, but something deeper. Peace. I watched her walk toward the street, her figure fading into the evening light. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. As the door closed behind her, I realized love doesn't always stay to be built or broken. Sometimes, it just arrives to leave you better than it found you. And as I stepped out into the night, I smiled. Not because I'd lost her, but because, for a little while, we both stopped pretending we weren't waiting to be found.